Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. Today we have a guest, Stephanie Strazinsky. Stephanie is a PA who worked in cardiothoracic surgery for not one, not two, but 39 years. She has seen some incredible changes in the healthcare system, in the way that PAs are perceived, and what we're able to see and do as she has built two different CT surgery programs. I am so excited to share Stephanie's wisdom with you. So without further ado, here she is, Stephanie Strazinsky. Stephanie, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be part of this.
This is awesome. So tell us about you and a little bit about your career as a PA.
So I decided to become a PA back in 1978 when I graduated from high school. That's how old I am. And I had, as part of my physical for college, I had to have a physical. So I went to the local hospital and a PA actually did my physical. And after talking to her for a little bit, like she did my stuff, and then we spent like half an hour talking about being a PA because I was like, well, what is it? And, how do you get to it? And those kinds of things. So I went to my first year of college going, okay, I think I want to go to PA school. So that was back in the day before we had the internet. So I had to do a little bit of research, and I can't even remember how I found out about the Association of PA Programs. And you could send them money and they would send you a book of all the programs in the country. And then I looked through that and I found one that would probably take all my credits. It was St. Francis College in Loretto, Pennsylvania, middle of nowhere. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go there. So I applied and got accepted and graduated in 1982. My first job was in a hospital in surgery. Wasn't really sure what kind, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have any particular specialty I was interested in except OBGYN, and there wasn't a lot of people hiring back then. So I decided, okay, surgery, they want to give me a job, I'll take it. So I ended up working with a group of 10 PAs that were just a really great group of people. I was fortunate enough that one of them kind of took me under her wing. She had a couple of years experience on me and taught me a lot, just not only how to be a PA, but how to be a healthcare worker, a team member. I learned a lot of different stuff from her, and I'm always grateful for that. And then I just kind of started doing cardiac surgery about a year after that, after general surgery, and kind of never looked back. And I spent the next 39 years doing cardiac surgery.
Wow. So there's a couple things about that I want to sort of pull out and highlight for our listeners. One is that you became a PA after one interaction with a PA.
Yes.
And that all of us think that, everyone who's out there listening, who's thinking like, well, I don't really have a platform. I'm not like influencing everyone. Like you are in your everyday visits, in the way that you speak to people, in the way that you present yourself for a profession, you are influencing people, and you do have the ability to give them this great view of what PAs can do, and just to share with them like how great we can be. So the second thing is you became a CT surgery PA really early on. Like you were a baby PA with 1 year of general surgery experience. And then you were in the deep end because cardiothoracic surgery is not, one of those sort of, just a cushy, specialty where nothing goes wrong. So Was it hard? Was it easy? Like, how was the onboarding when you started doing CT surgery all those years ago?
Well, like I said, I was part of a group of 10 PAs, so everyone kind of rotated. But then after that, I was fortunate enough that I was working with a couple of surgeons from the local university as well that would come over and do cases. And I really liked working with them. I liked the way they did things. We just kind of gelled. And so they said to me one day, "Hey, we're thinking of hiring a PA. Are you interested?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Good, because we are interested in you." So then I went to work at the university where I did strictly cardiac. I was the first PA to work in the operating room at that hospital. So that was
So
kind of
cool.
that was kind of a fun thing, scary, fun.
Yeah, it's great to be the first, but it's also terrifying because you're looking around and there's no one to ask and you're not exactly sure
Yeah, it
what to
was
do.
a lot of finding my way. The chairman of the department, obviously, university had residents, and he was afraid that I was going to take away from what the residents could learn. But pretty soon figured out that I wasn't there to take away from things; I was there to add. So that worked out very well.
So looking back, what do you feel were the things? So you were on this team with a bunch of other PAs. Those cardiac surgeons could have asked any one of them to join their team and to come and do cardiac. What do you think made you stand out or kind of be someone that they would want on their team?
Well, I wasn't bad at it, for one thing. Um, I mean, it sounds very, very boastful, but, I did a pretty good job. I kept my head down and my mouth shut, my eyes and ears open. And if you talk to any of the people that I worked with back then, they'll tell you that. And I just kind of soaked up everything I could possibly learn and, you know, got along with people. I think one thing that people forget about when they go to work in the operating room is, everybody has their certain jobs, but it's also important to help everybody else do their jobs as well. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost, between, crossing lines of what does what. And I think part of it was that, if you go in there not acting like I'm the PA and this is what I'm going to do, you kind of get, you know, you help drape the patient, you help prep the patient, you help position them, you help do all those kinds of things. And truly be part of a team, then I think it makes the job easier.
Yeah. And I think that beginner's mindset, that helper's mentality, that like, I'm not here for me, I'm here for we, right? I'm here for us, I'm here for the patient, and making sure that we get things done safely. All of those things are so important. And I feel like I could have done that a lot better as a student. As a student, I feel like I was scared, like especially in the OR, because the OR, they're like, okay, don't touch anything blue, right? Don't,
Exactly.
like they're like, and you're like, nothing blue, everything is
Everything is
blue.
blue.
Like you don't know. And then you're like, well, I want to ask to put in the Foley, but I also don't want the nurse to feel like I'm stepping on their toes. So what advice do you have if we have new grads listening, if we have students listening who are like, hey, like I want to be that team player, but I'm just not sure how or like how to jump in or what to do? What's your advice for that person?
So one of the things that I think is very helpful is if you just when you go into the room, introduce yourself if you don't know anybody. You can usually pick out the circulator pretty quickly because she's the one running around. And when you get a moment, just walk up and say, "Hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm here to, scrub on this case today. What can I do to help you?" You know, they'll probably say nothing, but the fact that you offered goes a long way. One of the things that I never realized that I did a lot, which nurses told me later they appreciated so much, was if I was if I was doing something in the case and I needed something, I always started out with, "Hey, when you get a chance, could you get me such and such?" And they're like, that acknowledgement that they're busy and that you're not trying to say, "Hey, get me this," goes a
Yeah,
long
now
way.
or else. Yeah, demanding. It softens your demand and it makes it a request, right? You're acknowledging, hey, like I see you charting and checking allergies and making sure this patient is where they need to be so that nobody gets yelled at, right? And we
Right.
can get this done. That to me, being willing to help inside or outside the OR, like how can I help as a student or even as a practitioner, and framing your requests kindly, just being nice and asking nicely goes a long way, because if you demand things, and it's a hard line to walk because you want to be respected and you want to be seen as in your role. Like, this is what I do. This is something that I'm asking because I need it, because this is what we're going to need to take care of the patient. And I think you can ask nicely without being a pushover. So do you feel like framing that as when you're free or requesting kindly, do you feel like that made them respect you less or think less of you as a provider?
I think they respected me more because I was acknowledging their place and what they were doing. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to feel seen and like we matter and like what we're doing is important. And so if you can ask people for things in a way that acknowledges them, I think that's just a great way to offer them the respect that you're hoping to get in return. Yeah. So what advice do you have for people who are early on in their career who are thinking about making a big move? So you were early on, you had, it sounds like, a general surgery position that you didn't hate, right? Things weren't terrible where you were. And this opportunity came along and you had to evaluate, is this it? Is this the right one for me? Is this the right time to make this change? So what went into that decision for you?
Well, first of all, I was totally flattered that they asked me to apply for it. So that went a long way to saying, okay, yeah, I need to pay attention to this. But also it was, I really enjoyed doing cardiac surgery, but I was still doing general surgery. I was taking call. I was doing, hemigastrectomies in the middle of the night when I'm half asleep. And I was like, oh my God, I hate these cases. So to do just a cardiac job for me that was going to be the thing. And I really enjoyed that. And the fact that they had never had a PA before. And I thought, I was young, I was dumb. I was 25 years old going, sure, let's do that,
What could go wrong, right?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't this be amazing?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so I showed up on my first day of the job, I remember, and I met this nurse who later became a very, very dear friend. But my first interaction together was, she's like, hi, my name's Jill, and I want to do what you're doing. And I was like, oh my God, is this what it's going to be like? Oh my God. But, again, you go in there, you help out, you don't sit there and, you acknowledge that they're busy. I think all those things, anytime you start a new job, that would be part of it. But the impetus for it was mostly because I just wanted to do cardiac. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And that position in general, and I also came from general surgery and moved into subspecialty after that. I think if you're coming out of school, and I tell my students this often, if you think you want to do surgery, but you're not sure which surgery you want to do, or you want to do some specific surgery that's hard to get into without experience, do general surgery and try as many things and do as many cases. Get in a hospital where you're operating next to the orthopedic surgeons, or you get to see, the urology cases, so that you have a taste of what they're doing and you can really figure out, like, I like the inside of the abdomen or I don't, or like cardiac is exciting to me, but general is not doing it. Like, understanding what specific aspects of medicine you like and don't like go a long way to really enjoying your job and having fun doing what you love.
Just as an aside, my second choice was plastics.
Yep.
I mean, whoa, talk about polar opposites, but still, it was the kind of stuff that I enjoyed, but yeah, I think as a student, you need to try to do as many things as you possibly can, because number one, you may never ever get that chance. When I was on rotation, I got to deliver a baby, never have that opportunity again. The more, if anyone says, hey, do you want to do this? Don't say no. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just try. They know you're a student. They know that you're not going to know it. If you're a new PA, they don't expect you to have all this experience under your belt. But unless you try it, you're never going to get good at it. I remember when when I first started at my general surgery job, they put me in neurosurgery a lot because, sucking patties is like my job, back in the day when they did everything open. And, I was like, I was in there all the time and I just really didn't like it. But I knew that the PA is always closed. So after I'd been there for about a week and a half, the surgeon looked at me and said, "Do you want to close?" And I was scared to death, but I said yes, because I knew how to do it. I'd seen enough of them, and I was like, there's nothing tricky here. You just have to actually do it. And so I did it. And you know what? Nothing bad happened from it. But, the more you do things, the more confidence you get.
Absolutely. And every time you do something successfully and every time you say yes to an opportunity, you prove yourself to be the PA that you want to be, right? So if you want to be the PA who's putting in central lines and intubating people and closing things and all of the things, you have to do a first one and you have to do a 10th one. And then you have to be the one that's someday teaching someone else how to do this.
Yeah. So I think all those things, they add to your experience. And even when things don't go so well, you always learn something from it as well.
This episode of The PA is In is brought to you by Medthusiast. They are my go-to source for hilarious, adorable medical apparel. Their items are incredible design-wise and with a level of comfort that is beyond compare. Whether you are in the market for a gift for your friends in medicine or looking for an excuse to treat yourself, there is something for everyone in any specialty or medical profession. For the latest designs from PA owner, creative genius, mom, and PICU PA Andrea, head to medthusiast.com. I think personally, I have learned more from procedures that have not succeeded, from opportunities where I tried to scope a catheter in over a wire and I couldn't get through or I couldn't see. And then my surgeon comes and does it and I see, oh, they did this, right? Or they still struggled with this part. That's normal. And they used this technique or, this is people who are listening who are maybe non-procedural won't get this, but you probably will. There's something very affirming when you struggle with something and then you raise your hand and ask for help from a senior provider or from someone else, and then they struggle and you're like,
yes.
Yes. You're like, I mean, I want this patient to get what they want, but also that's a little validating, right? It wasn't just
me.
Yes. This patient's anatomy is challenging. They have a stricture, they have a something. So it wasn't just me. And sometimes push harder is not the answer, right? That can get us into trouble. We do that a lot with Foleys though. We're like, just push harder, just push a little harder. Sometimes you can get it in. But yeah, when I tried to scope a person, someone awake in the ER and get their Foley in and I couldn't, and then my surgeon comes and they can't and they have to go to the OR, I was a little bit like, hey, it wasn't just me. Sometimes it's just hard.
Exactly. Of course, it's also frustrating too when you're trying, and then your attending comes in and just pops it and you go,
yeah.
Well, I warmed it up for you.
Yes, I got it nice and dilated. That was always me. I was like, he's so relaxed, I got him to the point. I did something to get him to the point where you were able to do that. So I want to talk about how your program grew and changed and how your role developed over time. So you had one job and then you got into CT surgery and then you did that for a very long time. So what changes have you seen? What have you been a part of that as PAs and their roles have grown and morphed as a part of CT surgery?
So yeah, it's kind of really interesting because at my very first job, we used to take in-house call. Because basically the 10 PAs were hired to replace surgical residents who had lost the program. So when I went to work there, the nurse is like, I don't have to take your orders. The nursing board was like, nope, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So consequently, none of the nurses would take our orders. So they would call us in the middle of the night to say, hey, I have this guy. He's 2 days post-op from a colectomy. He has a headache. And I'd say, well, give him some aspirin because, that's what we had at the time. And she's like, well, I'm not allowed to take your orders. And I'm like, okay, well, then you can call the attending. Well, can you come call him for it? No. And it was a little bit of a struggle kind of thing because it was very much, wait, you don't want to take my orders, but I'm not going to come here and make a phone call for you. because you'd make the phone call and then you'd have to hand the phone to the nurse so she could take the order from the physician. So thankfully, those days are gone. When I went to work at the university, the nurses were so happy to have one more person to write orders for them. They were ecstatic. And I remember one night we were really, really busy. We did transplants when I worked at the university. And so I was working a lot of hours and stuff, but I went up, it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I was getting ready to go home, but I wanted to check one thing on the floor. And I walked on the floor, and the charge nurse looked at me and went, "Thank God you're here." And I'm like, "What do you need?"
Why?
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
like, "I need a bunch of orders." And I crossed my legs right where I was, and I sat right down on the floor in the middle of the nurse's station because I was, everybody was working hard. There was nobody available. And she just brought me the charts and I wrote the orders, and it was good. So, now we put them in electronically, whatever. It's been a gradual change, but it's just very nice to see that PAs are now recognized as, good health providers, and can fill in the roles sometimes when nobody else is there, I guess.
So I do want to talk to you about how this career in cardiac surgery affected your work-life balance. So I think of all the specialties that PAs work in, CT surgery is probably the one that is the top of the list for like worst work-life balance. Was that your experience? How did that play out in your life?
Absolutely. It was a very difficult to really have a personal life kind of thing. I was working so much, but at the time I absolutely loved it. In 1994, well, let me go back a little bit before that. In 1993, I had breast cancer. And so I went through all, chemo, surgeries, all those things. And in 1994, one of the surgeons I worked with at the university said, "Hey, I'm going down to Virginia to start a new heart surgery program. Do you want to come with me?" And my first response, of course, was like, "No, I just went through this horrible experience in my life." It was, luckily at the time, everybody was very supportive, and I got through it without much of a problem. I was still able to work mostly through it. I'd had nurses that would like put pretzels and feed me ginger ale through my mask when I was doing a case if I needed it, but I got through it, and I was like, I do not want to move my whole life. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, why not?
Yeah.
It's still cardiac surgery. It's still what I want to do. And to get on the ground floor of a new program sounded kind of interesting because, I pretty much had done almost every kind of case there was. We did transplants, dissections, regular cabbages, valve replacements. And I was like, okay, this is a chance to do something different. So I said, okay, fine. So I moved down to Virginia and I worked like a dog. And then somewhere around the year 2000, which is when I turned 40, I kind of looked at things and went, okay, you're 40 years old. You don't even have a boyfriend, let alone a husband right now. You don't have any kids, and you always wanted to have a family. What are you going to do? And all my friends were like, you should adopt. So I was like, oh, let's do that. you know? So I went through the process, and I adopted a little girl from Ukraine who is now going to be 21 years old in 2 weeks.
Oh, yay.
And yeah. And so that was okay, this is how I'm going to have a life outside my job. Around that same time, aortic dissection is the biggest surgery that we do, and they're always emergencies, and they always happen at nighttime. I went from, oh, yay, a dissection, let's go, to, oh, man, I'm going to be up all night. I'm going to have to work tomorrow. And that's when I started realizing my mind was shifting. And all of a sudden, it wasn't all about the job anymore. And between that and my daughter, I kind of, tried to have a life outside of that. I had gone to another job. I'm from Cleveland originally, and I moved up to Cleveland for a couple years for my daughter to be closer to family. I hated the weather. And when they said, do you want to come back to Virginia? I'm like, oh, please.
Where it's sunny and warm and winter is mild.
Exactly. So then I moved back, and this time it was for a non-operative job. It was to basically help take care of the patients, inpatients and outpatients for the cardiac and thoracic surgery service. And so that was my thing of, okay, let's try to get more work-life balance. It was scary because I was like, am I going to miss the OR too much? But, frankly, I'm getting older. And to have to stand in the OR for hours at a time just wasn't working for me very much anymore. And I kind of liked the fact that I didn't have to be there, or be at the whim of whenever there was a case. I would come in, I would work my day and then go home. Now, granted, I was still on call, but at least it was more manageable. And, I know you kind of saw me on the PA Moms Facebook page. I see a lot of stuff on there right now about work-life balance. And I think that's probably something that COVID kind of taught us, that this is more important than you thought it was. So I see a lot of people struggling with that. And all I can tell them is, if it feels right in your gut, do it.
If you only take one sheet of paper to your next negotiation, let it be the PA Pay One Sheet. It's a tool designed to walk you through setting up the ideal outcomes, assessing the situation you are negotiating in, and it even includes a reminder of which negotiation skills you can use. Stop what you are doing. Download the One Sheet, print it out, fill it out, and literally bring it to the table with you when you are negotiating next. It's designed specifically to work in healthcare settings wherever you are. You can use the PA One Sheet to get the best deal, the biggest raise, and to help your confidence walking into your next negotiation. Head to www.tracybingaman.com/one, that's ONE, to download your free copy of the PA Pay One Sheet and start prepping for your next negotiation today. It's linked in the show notes, but in case you missed it, it's at www.tracybingaman.com/ONE. It's such great advice. It's not always logical.
Right, right. I saw a meme one time that said, if you leave your job, they will replace you. If you leave your family, they can't replace you. And that just kind of keeps hitting home this idea of, if you think you're working too much, go find something that you don't have to work as hard. I wish, in some respects, I wish I had done that earlier.
Yeah, I think that's such an important reminder because professionally, I have done this, and I think our listeners can probably relate to this. Sometimes you love what you do and you're doing it too much. Sometimes you find your job to be fulfilling and mentally stimulating and exhausting and amazing. And also, it's no longer working for you. It doesn't have to be like, I hate everything about this and it's no longer working for me. Sometimes it's like, it's great. I love everything about it except I am having a hard time building boundaries, or I am having a hard time getting a schedule that works for me during this season of life. And also, nothing is forever, and that job that you have is not the only one.
And it's probably going to change at some point, to the point where you're going to say, no, I don't like it anymore. I have yet to find anybody who's worked one job for more than, 7 or 8 years. I mean, what is it? The average PA stays at a job 4 years. Is that what it is these days?
Yeah, it's definitely that people are making changes. And even if you stay at the same organization or in the same specialty, you change the way, the shifts, the schedule, the inpatient or outpatient. So you could do cardiology for 50 years, but do it in very different ways, depending on what you're interested in, depending on what works for you during that season. And the beauty of being a PA, I think the biggest myth about being a PA is that being a PA is like such better work-life balance than being a physician. I think that's not true. But what is really cool and is true is that you can change when you are out of balance. So when things are not working, you can do any other specialty. You can move. You are so portable. You are so useful that in any specialty, in any part of the country, someone will find you valuable and hire you. And you've done that. I mean, you had this amazing tenure, like a great career at a university hospital. And you said, like, I'm going to take a chance and go somewhere else and start something different.
Yeah, and I think people are starting to realize that now. I have this theory that, it's really kind of funny that, you know, America was built on immigration, right? Like everybody came to America for a better life. And like my grandparents came over, and my grandfather believed that if he worked really hard, he could provide for his family, and then he would retire and live out his retirement. My dad was very much like that as well. I retired early. Well, I'm part time right now, but you know, I'm not waiting till I'm 65 or 67 because I want to do what I want to do now.
Yes.
You know? And if you set yourself up for that, then you can do those kinds of things. And as I was retiring, I work with a bunch of nurse practitioners, and they're all looking at their retirement stuff now and going, okay, how can I do it so that I can retire earlier, kind of stuff. So it's a very much I think that people have this mindset that you have to work really, really, really hard until you retire. And I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah. And I see, you and I are sort of at the opposite ends of the bell curve of our career, right? I'm sort of on the upswing and you're on the downswing. But the thing that I see in younger providers now is that they're saying, no, I'm not going to kill myself for 40 years. I'm going to find something that works for me now, even if it means a little less money, but more time at home, even if it means like part-time status and figuring out benefits, because I don't want to delay my joy. I don't want to be miserable for 3 decades and then finally happy, because that happy ending is not promised. We don't know about our health. We don't know about our family. We don't know what that's going to look like. And so just saying, hey, what can I do even like today that's going to bring me joy? How can I build boundaries and feel good about the work that I'm doing and fulfill my contractual obligation, but don't go looking to be the hero of the whole healthcare system. Just do your job,
I mean,
go
you
home.
hear people say all the time, millennials are lazy. They're not lazy. They just have different priorities. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that at all. And I wish that I had had some of that earlier in my career.
Yeah. Over time, the deeper I have gotten in, and for me, it coincided with motherhood and with having these priorities outside of work. For me, when I was early in my career, financials mattered way more, and flexibility, I could take or leave. I didn't care. I was like you. It was like 2 a.m. I'm fixing a perfect bowel. Like I'm living my best life. Like I don't need to sleep. Like who cares? Right? Like it was like amazing. And then over time, flexibility has started to matter way more. Like I almost don't care what specialty I do, but like, are they flexible? Like, does the schedule work for our family? Are they going to pay me a little less? I don't care. Like, I would rather have the time than the money. I would rather have the memories with my kids and that, being present than like the glory of being, this provider working in this specialty.
Right, right. And I think that that's kind of the shift that we're seeing now. And again, I think COVID had something to do with that because people started realizing when they were staying at home that, wow, this is kind of a pretty good gig, you know? So I think it's kind of a national shift as well, not just within healthcare.
Absolutely. And I think that contributed to all those stats on the Great Resignation and all of the nurses who were like, yep, I'm good. I think there's something about a shift from the normal, this like fear that came with like global pandemic. No one knows what's happening. And we're working, some of us on the front lines, like in acute care inside of a hospital, that made us say, oh, maybe success as I defined it before is not actually what I want my life to look like or feel like. And it's important to say that. And it's important to say, hey, I thought success was 2 BMWs and a big ass house, but it's actually like being home when my kids get off the bus. Like, and if that means I'm not driving a BMW, like who cares?
Yeah, and it's not, driving your BMW 20 minutes late to your kid's soccer game.
Yes.
you know? So yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think, quality of life is important, and I think it's finally starting to hit home with a lot of people.
Yeah, that quality of time of, being present and making the most of that time that you have. I For one, like I love this shift. Like I'm all about negotiating and getting more money, but if what you really want is more flexibility, like ask for more flexibility. Find a way to do what you love for your practice to see value in you and for you to also be there for soccer on time, not stressed, not as a shell of yourself, like really there for soccer. That's what matters.
Right, right. Right now, so I tried to retire, but they asked me if I would help take call until new people are hired and up and running. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I do one weekend a month of call, which is, totally doable. Um, but I'm also helping out in the office. We see inpatients and outpatients. It was very difficult because you'd go do your inpatient stuff, and before you could write your notes or anything, there's people in the office. So what I'm doing now is I'm filling in that gap for the office where I just see the office people. And this leaves everyone else able to do, you know, their work on the hospital stuff, get their notes written, get the patients taken care of, follow up on, orders and tests and stuff. And, that's like a huge shift for our office because we've never done it like that before, but it works really well. So I think that's, it's not just figuring out whether you want to stay in that job, but how can, like you said, how can you reframe that job to provide for everybody's, work-life balance kind of thing.
And if you can present that to administration in a way that sort of buries the lifestyle benefit for you and leads with this will be better for our patients because inpatient, they're going to have one provider all day who's going to follow up with the nurses, who's going to know the family, and also like we're going to have more retention because people are going to have a better quality of life. Your administrative team will be like, oh, like this is going to help everyone. And if it can help the patients and also providers, because, quality of life and retention, like it's expensive for practices to recruit and train and have the downtime of someone who left before they got someone in. So if we can say like, hey, this helps our bottom line, this helps our patient care. And by the way, it's going to lead to happier providers who make fewer mistakes and take better care of our patients. Like that matters. And that matters to them too. Like the healthcare system, I think gets a bad rap, but each administrator isn't evil, right? They're trying to run a business and get patients cared for and make sure everyone, gets what they need. And if you can find, I think it's a lot of it is sort of carving out a niche, finding a way to make it work. And oftentimes it's not a listed position exactly how it's listed.
Yes. Yes.
It's sort of crafting your current team and adapting what people want to do because you can have 10 CT surgery PAs on a team and 2 love the OR, 4 love to round, and 4 want to be in the office. Like how can how can you make that work with the resources that you have? Yeah. Well, Stephanie, this has been so much fun. I feel like you have such wisdom to share with us. So I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of what you have learned in your career as a PA. I'm sure you have touched so many lives and made such a difference in your patients' lives.
It's been a great career. I'm hoping it's not going to last too much longer, so that I can really retire soon. But yeah, thank you for having me on. This was really, really fun. I was really kind of nervous, but this was
You did
great.
so wonderful. And I think everyone listening feels like they had a good conversation with like a mentor who's been through it and who can say like, first of all, it's going to be fine. And second of all, like it's okay to make a brave, crazy change, and take a calculated risk to do some of these great things that you've done.
So thank you very much, Tracy.
It is so encouraging to me to hear these incredible stories of a long, wonderful, fulfilling, and sometimes stressful career as a PA, how you have to decide when it's right to make a change, and how you can have this profound impact on the people within your family and being present for them, but also on your patients. Stephanie had an encounter with the PA almost 50 years ago that led to her becoming a PA and spending 40 years of her life serving patients when they were at their worst. After transplant and open heart surgery and aortic dissection and valve replacement and all of these crazy, scary things, Stephanie was there by their side. It makes me realize that one single encounter can have a massive impact on someone else's life. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. We will see you next time. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.